I'm just gonna do office hour style today. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, I just want to ask about skills, but was you can go ahead
Yeah.
first.
No, no, you go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to figure out like what are
Skills. Skills.
number one, I guess like cover what you think what your definition of skills are, and then how you apply to your projects, and then any other like specific use cases or
Yes,
not.
yes. Okay. Let's do that.
Also, like maybe skills that helps like parse through Excel files that you upload or something, like specific instructions. I don't know what I don't know.
Okay. What do you know about skills?
Well, due to context, right, like you want things to be compressed and just like specific instructions that doesn't fill up too much context. So it's like I just think you can create skills to add to the projects so Claude has better like direction or instructions when it outputs answers.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
When you're working with these agents and Claude or anything in general, it's just um, a lot of the struggle is having it reproduce the exact same results every time. So like even like for example, I work with my OpenClaw agents. I'll tell it like, hey, I want you to, when this happens, I want you to do this. These are the steps to do it, and it'll do it fine the first time. It might do it fine the second, third time, but the more time you do it, the more it like kind of starts forgetting. It doesn't like retain that memory. So you use skills so that it understands exactly what the steps are to accomplish something. Um, and in a way that's repeatable. It's reusable. You can share the skill with somebody and it can do the same thing. Um, yeah, so basically it's just to make it reusable and that the way that skills work is you can have just like a library full of skills that your agent has access to. And whenever an agent executes a task, its first thought is to check if it has a skill or tool that applies to that task you're asking it to execute. So that's like usually one of the pre-calls that like before it even starts thinking, it's like it thinks about can I use a skill or a tool for this? And if you have something available in your skill or tool base, then it'll automatically pull that and use that skill.
okay. I guess like where do you hold or where do you store all these skills?
Yeah.
I'm assuming we'll make like a bunch of them, right? But
Yes.
want
Yes.
to
So it's
manage like how to manage that and keep track of them.
okay. So on Claude, you can
Mhm.
um somewhere in here. Down here, capabilities.
Oh,
They
okay.
move to customize. So it's in start over. Settings. Wait, what the fuck? Customize? What the hell is custom? Oh, it's up top. It's actually right here. So they moved it here. So here you can add skills and connectors.
Mhm.
Right. So skills. Um, they also have a skill creator one where you can just ask it to creating. Oh wait, this.
Is that
Yeah, yeah.
different than like if you make a project and you give it instructions? Is it similar or
No.
no?
Um, actually, it's kind of similar. A skill is a little more reusable and a little more reliable. If you so it depends. If you're talking about like a project description, like when you first create that project and you put in that like you tell it what exactly it does, that basically is a skill. That it treats it as a skill because that's its like core objective and it'll read that each time. But if you're let's say you're working on a project and you talked about it in one chat about, oh hey, this is my operations, I do this for e-commerce, this is like these are my workflows. I need you to do these steps. And then like the next time around that you do the same thing, it might not do the same thing because it didn't have a skill to rely on. It's just relying on like some kind of memory that's not great.
So I guess that right now what we're looking at is just like a basic skill creator skill. right?
Yeah, but let's see. Do I have anything useful in here? No, these are all default
Right.
ones. Let me show you one online that I use a lot. Um,
And also what I had in mind was also just trying to experiment with creating skills that helps me replicate my sales messages in my
yeah,
code. And
so
also like
remember that thing I sent you? The text.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Let me just show it to Wesley also. Um, I'm gonna go guys and do this. Here it is. Uh, I'm just gonna drop this in the chat too, so you can just look at it later. But this is something that I use pretty often. It's just a prompt for whatever agent you're using to to basically analyze whatever the hell you're doing with the agent and make a skill if it's worth making a skill. This is like I don't know if this really applies to Claude as much as it does like if you use OpenClaw or agents, but it may still be helpful. Yeah. So let me go back to showing you.
Yeah, I no, so quick question. So for someone that isn't using OpenCloud right now, right, where would they paste that into?
Can't really. So like you would have to adapt that prompt a little bit
Yeah,
so that it's like instead of like saying, oh, you do it manually the first few times, you could like do something with Claude Code. And
yeah.
at the end of your chat, after you've completed everything and you've successfully completed the task with Claude or Claude Code or Claude itself, you just ask like, is this something worth creating a skill for? And if so, let's create a skill,
Hmm.
right? And
Okay.
it'll just like analyze everything in that chat. Since it's within fresh context memory, so it'll be able to create a pretty good skill for that.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah. So I was just in the middle of showing you guys some skills that I use. This is like this is a marketing skill repo. This is just like a ton of different skills for marketing agents. And they're actually skills that cross rely on each other. Where you guys can take a look. I'll drop this in the chat too.
Hmm.
This is
Please.
this is one of my favorite skills. Whenever I'm having my AI agents do any of my like business marketing stuff, like for e-commerce, for data, for any kind of like stuff like that. I
And this
recommend
is
it.
for you need like open claw for this.
No, you can pretty much just copy and paste this GitHub into Claude and just tell it to add it to your skills, I think. If not, you can open these skills and individually add them to your Claude Code skills. Like
Okay.
Yeah. So it's funny. I
the
tell to marketers, I'm just be like, yo, respond to my emails or I'm sending your upper management this.
yeah, so here you see there's a create skill, and then you can do either write skill instructions, upload a skill, or create with Claude. So I think you could just like you could just dump all the files in there.
Would you be able to showcase how to use one? Because sometimes I've played around with like Claude, like the chat and the code, and I'll see it sometimes. Like I'll give it a prompt, and it'll be like, okay, creating this skill, right? Like I guess like how would you use it practically? So like for example, if you had like one of the ones that you showed before, like the Corey Haynes marketing ones, like how would
Uh,
you like for example if we just picked like a cold email, right? Like do you think we could run through an example of like pulling up using that skill and like just drafting something? Or it
um,
doesn't have to be, the marketing one, anyone that you have, just more so like workflow wise.
so in my personal workflows, these skills are like they don't really like surface themselves. They don't really like show kind of. So I have to kind of think about how I would show
Mm.
it, do it in a way that's like very visible. Because it's really, they're just guidelines, right? So like whenever I ask for something, it'll just do it following these guidelines. If you open each skill, they're literally just text files. Like they're just text files saying like how this works, right? And like, persona, it's the same as how we build the prompts. What
Right.
yeah, so it's basically just a prompt, but it enforces that it uses the prompt. Um,
So can you like call upon a skill? Like I guess
you can explicitly ask for it. Let me see. Let me see if I can just uh
like I guess my question is like let's just say, there's one I see that says like email writing, right? Or something like that. If you ask Claude to like write you an email, would it like know to pull from that skill, or would you have to like call it specifically? I guess is sort of my question.
it should know, right?
Oh,
So it like before it even does like the actual thinking of like answering a question, it'll try to figure out if there's a skill that it can use to accomplish that better. So you need Claude code. Claude code.
Andy, what have you been using like AI for? Just so we could all get on the same page.
Yeah, I just been making projects for a bunch of random stuff like like working out,
Oh,
music,
nice.
like planning, project management. And then I had an open claw go look up emails and label contacts for a little bit. Yeah.
For the music.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
like
nice.
going out to look for label contacts for artists and then trying to find their emails, and it did find a few. And
Mm,
then yeah, just like project management for like certain songs, like what's the status on them, etc. But still work in progress.
yeah.
How about yourself?
Yeah, I use it for a few things. I guess like I don't use it too much like personally, I guess. I'll use it a lot for work. Through like, slides, like emails, like stuff like that. I find for like slides, it's not that good. I'll use it just like fix up wording and stuff like that. I'll use it in like the Excel. It's pretty good at like the Excel if you're doing stuff that's really hard to do with like a formula but needs to be done manually. It's really good for that. And then, similarly like you just like working on like some projects and stuff, just like tinkering around. Like I was messing with like Claude Code and like NAN the other day and I was able to like it took me like forever, but I was able to like do this flow that like basically pulls like trending topics every day, right? And then like sort of turns that into a script, turns the script into like a voiceover, and then like, turns that voiceover into like a video, like all like automated. It took like forever. But it's just like fun, like playing around with that stuff. And then also like I do some like in internet marketing stuff as well. So it's been really helpful in terms of like connecting with like all these different platforms and then like helping me draft. But it's still like a very work in progress. Like I don't think I'm using it as efficiently as I can be, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, done is better than perfect, or at least like with
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
progress and then just like slowly iterating and improving. But yeah, that's dope.
Yeah, you mentioned that you used OpenClaw to like I guess like scrape like contact information, right?
Yeah.
What is the difference between that and like I've noticed that like when I linked my Claude to my Chrome and I ask it to scrape it, it sort of does that as well, but without OpenClaw. Like, is there like a pure advantage?
Hmm. Kevin,
So uh, OpenClaw just has a lot less like boundaries. It you can like I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to describe, but like it's just I don't know.
I
Mm.
Like
think
you
open
have a
call.
lot more choice of like what you want to, how you want to use it, like how to customize it. For example, like if the Chrome browser one doesn't work, like browsers in general are very bad right now for AI usage. So if that one doesn't work, like I have an option of 5 different browsers I can use. I can hook this one up to a Vercel browser. I can hook it up to maybe like a Cloudflare scraper or like any other data source, and I can easily do that in OpenClaw in a way that's kind of seamless, where I can just like ask the agent, be like, hey, I need to do this, and it'll pretty much figure it out for me. Whereas I guess it's kind of the same in Claude Code. It's it, I think it's more of like kind of like power user restrictions where like the
Mhm.
more you use this, the more you realize like, oh, I want a little more flexibility and customizability. And that's kind of where it starts like being more useful.
Yeah, I believe everything you can, well, a lot of things that you can do with OpenClaw, you can do in Claude, but it's just like a separate agent that does it for you.
Yeah, yeah. Also, it can run like completely 24/7, separate without you dispatching it every time. Um,
So when would you use that over like NAN, right? Because NAN could run autonomously as well.
pretty
Or I
much
guess like
all, pretty much
semi-autonomous.
always because NAN is like for me, NAN is heavily restricted because of the way that they require you to set up all these nodes and like type in exactly what you want for each node and how you want them to run. Whereas like all those configs can be set automatically in OpenClaw, right? I can set up the right workflows, the scheduling, all that stuff with like a few good prompts instead of having to. The whole point of end and like main and Zapier is so that beginners can really like people that are non-technical can just like drag blocks around and understand
Mhm.
exactly how the flow goes. But if you understand that flow in your head and you can like design and map it out, then it's much easier to just prompts with OpenClaw and
And does OpenClaw also like it uses APIs and stuff like that?
yeah, it's like
Okay.
it's pretty much the same thing. It's just you can either use your API credits, which it's pretty expensive honestly if you use API credits, or you can use a GPT subscription. There's also another thing called NanoClaw, which is similar, but it's like a little more stripped down. It relies on Claude code that still works with the Claude subscription. But OpenClaw got banned by Claude, so you have
Oh.
to use the API. Like you can't use
Uh,
this, you can't use the Mac subscription, basically.
Yeah.
oh, like you have to use the Claude API, you're saying.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
is
it's like a pay
pretty
as you
fucking
go.
expensive.
So I can't use my, my pro subscription anymore for that usage.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you should just use GPT for now. It's it's probably like when you first start, it's good enough. Like when you're first learning the limits of AI, GPT is more than good enough. You'll eventually get annoyed at it when it's like when you're trying to like automate and scale. But at the beginning, it's very, very good.
You're talking about for OpenClaw?
No, GPT. Like I personally, I think GPT is a fucking pain in the ass. Because like
Uh,
I can't set it off to run long running tasks or anything too complex. Because it'll just keep coming back and asking me like if it to proceed or not. Even though like I'll tell it like keep working
uh,
until it's done. And it'll still be it'll like come back and be like, oh, do you want to keep doing this? Like this is what I discovered. This is the best way to proceed. And I'm like, yeah, proceed. And then I have to say that every like 5 minutes because it's like kind of retarded.
Wait,
oh,
I think Wes meant using GPT's API for OpenClaw.
So
I
yeah,
guess what is when you guys say GPT, is that like Chat GPT or is it like
ChatGPT, yeah.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. They have like I didn't know they had like an OpenClaw type function.
If they had an
So
agent,
OpenClaw can accept any LLM. You can pick and choose between like all the hundreds of LLMs. You can pretty much connect anything you want.
Mm,
GPT and Claude are just probably the best ones right now.
yeah. Okay.
But there's others too. Like there's GLM 5.1. There's also Minimax. Um there's a few Chinese ones that are actually pretty good. I would say they're like 80% of the level that Claude is at. So it's like it's like kind of up to you to experiment. Those are also cheaper. So eventually, when like I would recommend it at the start, you just use the absolute best all the time. You waste a little bit of money, it's okay. You're gonna learn from it, and then once you've figured out your workflows, once you've figured out what you can actually like get value out of this from, then you start figuring out how to optimize later and like how like thinking about like how if it's a smaller task, then I can use a smaller model, right? If I it's
Right.
for example for my setup when I chat with my OpenClaw, I use GPT, which is like free for me because I have a subscription. But when I'm writing the code, I have it dispatched to Claude Opus so that it's writing better code. Right. So you'll create like these little structures, and then like for example, like I have another agent that monitors it that like checks in every like few minutes to see what's going on if there's any pending tasks, and that one's on like an even smaller Chinese model. Right. So it's but that's like something you shouldn't really worry about for now.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, for my current usage, it's a little like overkill, but just like learning the process and seeing how things go. And then once an idea pops up, I'll just like test it out with OpenClaw and go from there.
Yeah, it will feel like it's gonna be a little overkill in the beginning, um, but it's good to just like get familiar because these things grow at such a rapid rate, and just having that understanding while it's growing, it will allow you to capitalize on it.
Mm. Yeah, one thing that I sometimes I struggle with is that, and this might sound like a super elementary question, is like I don't really know when to use chat or code or co-work. Like in my mind, they do like are they pretty much so I'll just give you like a perfect example, right? I'll go to
Mhm.
like chat and then I'll just be like, hey, can you like, you know, look at the different connectors and whatnot for like Shopify, Klaviyo, whatever, right? And then it'll do it.
Mhm.
And I'll do it in code and it'll do it as well, right? So sometimes it's
Right.
confusing for me when to use either one. I think co-work is a little bit easier because co-work actually makes like files on your computer, right? So I know like if I need a file, right, I have to use co-work. But for the other two, it's a little bit confusing for me.
I see. Okay, so with chat, it's usually um if I'm asking a question, right? I need to know something. Um, I need to like I don't know learn something. I need to make a decision, and I don't really need it. I don't need it to do any work for me, right? That's
Mm.
usually what chat's for. Um, co-work, it's like mainly for I need to do perform some kind of action using the connected integrations, whether that's like Google Drive, Calendar, email, um, something else. So anything that's connected through integrations, I need to do a task right now, or maybe a scheduled task that happens every once in a while, right? And then code is like I need to build systems. I need to build something that is repeatable, that's going to help me solve some problem, that's going to automate a workflow. I need to like, let's say I need to build like a Python script or a Chrome extension or like anything that has like code in it, um, that I would use uh, Quad Code.
Mm.
Right, you're building your own custom code with Claude Code. Like even when Claude Code is doing stuff, it's like writing code in the background and running it. Right, it'll
Right.
pull on different scripts, libraries, download stuff, and then it'll yeah. So that's like the difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I guess if we were to take a specific example, right? If we were to say like, so there's like a integration between like Claude and like Klaviyo, right? Klaviyo is like a
Mhm.
marketing.
Yeah,
Um,
there we go.
okay, so if you were to like, okay, write me like a 30-day, marketing campaign. We want, X sales emails, X education emails, call to action, et cetera, et cetera. Like
Mhm.
you would do that in Cowork.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Okay.
I think for code, it's like if you say like build me some marketing
Like an app or something, or
triggers based on like a Marketo or something. There's a trigger of like an inbound sign up, and then I want you to
uh,
add it to like an email sequence or something, right, Kev?
Yeah, yeah, kind of. If you're building flows and automations and applications, then you use Cloud Code. Um, okay, so this one, you see, it skipped the skill because it actually like looked at it and it was like, oh, this one's for multi-email sequences, and it doesn't
mm.
apply. But like if it does apply, then it will use it. Um, let me see, let me try another one. So the first thing I did was it read the email sequence skill. You can see it's currently looking for this is.
And that's the skill you just downloaded.
Yeah, that was I just
Oh,
downloaded
okay.
one single sample skill. Um, yeah, but you can pretty much dump as many skills as you want. It's pretty good at finding skill it needs because each skill has a description of
Mm.
what skill is to use to accomplish, and that's the first point of reference for the page.
So if you wanted to push this into Klaviyo, you would have did this in Cowork.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
because you have your coworker integration, right? So you just connect.
Okay.
It's already connected to Klaviyo, then you can direct it. Wait, is there a coworker Klaviyo integration?
Yeah.
It doesn't it fucking suck. Like I, I
It
feel like
does.
it was heavily limited in what I could do on it.
Yeah, it pushes it into like HTML. So you can't really, at least, or I don't want to say you can't. I don't know how to like stick
Customize.
images and stuff into it. I know, like, I guess, just for context on sort of how I use it, like I linked up Klaviyo, I linked up Shopify, I linked up uh Meta, Google, and Canva. Like I just integrated, and then I asked it to like run an audit of like everything. What's wrong with the site, what's wrong with my marketing, yada yada. Like and I had all the stats obviously from like Meta, Google, Klaviyo, like basically all that stuff.
Yeah.
AOV, like basically everything. And then like I basically got this like audit that said like these are my top 10 issues or whatever, and then I could just like systematically go through it.
Yeah.
So like that was like pretty helpful.
Yeah, I like built my own thing that like hooks onto all of these. Um, like for example, let's see they're all these are inactive right now on. So like I have it hooked up to like Meta, Google Analytics,
Mm.
and then I built my own email sender because I fucking hate Klaviyo. They piss me off so much. So I have like my own like I have my own email flows and everything.
Is it hard to build? Okay, the email.
It's a little hard.
Like it has
I'm not gonna
flows
lie.
and like campaigns, I imagine is pretty easy, right? Like, but like, is it the flows that's like
It
tricky?
there's a lot of like little like edge cases and like tiny considerations that you hit when you start building things. It's
Yeah.
like things that you would never consider, right? Like for example, like sending limits, right? You
Right.
can only send X amount of emails, and like a lot of people manage it for you. Like they manage the what do you call it, rate limit of these emails being sent out so that you
Mm,
don't get marked as spam.
right.
There's like a series of different things you have to do to prevent being marked as spam. You have to set up unsubscribes so that when people are unsubscribed, they actually get taken off and you don't email them again. You have to have there's so much stuff. Like it looks simple from the surface, but like once you start building, it gets like really complicated. And a lot of this is like you just work with Claude Code or whatever. You just start building the simple part. When things break, you just tell it, hey, I need to add this, right?
Yeah.
And like over time, over the years, as you build more things, you have the enough experience and foresight to add that consideration into your starting document so that it takes that into consideration on the first build. And then you get like
Mm,
much higher quality stuff. Yeah, but skills, you can pretty much, there's like skill marketplaces, but I don't think it's worth even paying for skills. Just like Google it. If you need a skill for something, Google it and just drop the file directly into your Claude or into whatever you're using. Open file, you can also just drop the skill and tell it to add it. Um,
Yeah. I've also heard like for security reasons, someone I forgot where I like learned about it. They said to just take the skill and make Claude remake it.
mm.
I guess that's don't take the skills from like the depths of the internet. Like
Yeah.
for example, this marketing skill is like it has let's see how many like 20K stars and
Yeah.
3,000 forks, and this is like a public GitHub repo with 9 contributors. So like this is probably safe, right? But don't take something that some guy like peddled to you off this corner
Yeah.
of the internet and like put it in. If that's the case, then yeah, I would put it through Claude first because they could easily inject like code and like prompts into it.
Mhm. Wait, this is kind of like a whole different topic, but do you have a separate like OpenClaw or some kind of agent that scans what you task your main OpenClaw to go do or something as like a second layer? You have like a validation layer.
What do you mean validation?
So like you'll have one OpenClaw go scan emails, right? And then it'll report back to another agent on what it's found online, and then it pushes like whatever information.
No, it's just one agent.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no need to have two agents for that. It's like keep as little complexity as possible for AI stuff. It's like the more you add, the more it just like explodes. It's not good. But like in terms of like validation, like
I like security mainly because like what if
security,
there's like pop injections when it scans websites and then
it's pretty good at like not taking prompts from the websites
okay.
and emails, right? It has security built in. It's pretty difficult to bypass the security. You'd have to be like a very, very like top tier AI engineer to even understand how to bypass that.
Yeah.
And it has like for example for your open core, like it has allow lists of like who is allowed to run things and like, execute things for my system. Right. So it has a lot of boundaries in terms of execution. So you won't really have that issue.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just overthinking.
Yeah, don't worry. You got nothing to lose.
Yeah. I mean, so Wes, I just want to go a little deeper into like the music thing. So what I eventually envisioned is like first step was just tasking it to go find emails and contacts of label people or artists.
Okay.
Right? Eventually, I want to build it out into say, okay, like draft me emails, find their personal like information, like what is their name, right? So when it
Yeah.
emails, it knows their name and it knows a little bit about them or any previous
Yeah.
contact history, and then it'll just draft the email, and I will be the one that says when to send the email, right? I'm not gonna have it automatically send out emails, but
Right.
like finding the information and then drafting on the email has been the most arduous tasks like back then. So I want to make sure I simplify that with this
Okay.
whenever it's ready.
Have you tried it yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you should try it.
Yeah.
It's not too bad.
Yeah.
With OpenClaw, you can pretty much just ask it like, hey, this is what I need to do. It'll
Yeah.
help you do it. Um, once you figure out how to do it like one time, then you can ask it to help you automate it.
Yeah. It's like I need the email, I need the name, like
It's not hard at all.
whatever. And then once I have the song ready, right, I need like my Dropbox or whatever link in the email, and
Right.
then I'll be ready to send out.
Right. I mean, ideally for your, honestly, I would make a website for your own like artist name, and just like instead of using Dropbox links, like send a like share link, like a gated share link with a password through your own website, just so that it's like looks nice.
Okay.
Dropbox, people hate Dropbox.
Yeah, it's just like industry standard, just like here's a
Oh,
sound Dropbox link, and they just click
okay.
it.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. That's fine.
That's
I mean,
pretty.
that's a pretty easy thing to automate. Like you'll get into APIs and like data providers like who can provide you this kind of data. Um, you'll figure that out.
Yeah.
It's basically just like scraping and enrichment. So you just scrape the initial data, you enrich it by cross-referencing the web for contact information. Customize it based on like whatever this guy's background is,
Right.
all that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, maybe this is helpful, maybe not, but I did something similar on Claude Code actually like yesterday, where it was like I was I was looking for like basically independent retailers, right? So not like these like big box stores like a Target or Walmart, whatever. These like smaller, like call it like boutiques, right? And then I asked Claude, I think it was Cowork to like basically write a list, right? And then like with like these, specific specifications, and then we want like this type of email, and then add in the beginning, the first, two sentences, I want it to be relevant to the specific retailer, right? Not generic. And it did a pretty good job of like pulling that. It was like scraping the website. It was like doing all that stuff. And then I just basically, I guess the different steps was first we aligned on like an email template, right? Like rough template. And then we had the brackets for the first paragraph on, anything personal or personalized rather. And then after we got that refined, we had the list, and then it was probably like 50. I asked it to pull 50, like just research 50 retailers, and then I asked it to like go through the first 25, and like if they have an email, like draft the email in Gmail, and then there's like a Gmail connection in Claude, and then if they don't have an email, like draft it in their contact, and then like let me know which one's which, and it was able to do that like pretty good.
Yeah. I mean that's definitely the best way to start. Just like I probably just use Well, you have overclock, so you don't really need, but you could also use cowork. And then the next step would be to like automate it so you can scale it up so that it's repeatable.
I guess like would OpenClaw, if you wanted to automate that, you would need OpenClaw.
You don't need OpenClaw. I mean,
Mm.
nobody really needs it. I mean, you just have to. I would use Claude Code to write up a system to do that. Um, just because like with cowork, it's not. I mean, you could. Okay, so you can also use scales, right? Like theoretically, a scale would be good enough to make this repeatable, so that every time you ask cowork for another 50, it already knows what exactly it needs to do, right? So that is a possibility. It's obviously not as reliable as like code that is like hard written specifically for this task.
Mm.
So I mean, you'll find these boundaries yourself, right? You at some point you'll find that there's like some inconsistent behavior, and then you'll just that's when you shift over to code. But if not, then you may not never need to.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, the one topic that I always had a question about, it's I don't even know how to like ask it. It's sort of like a processing thing. Is that like let's just say I did the action that I just mentioned with scraping emails,
Mhm.
and then like I want to do it again. Like, do I do it in like it's like kind of like a silly question. Do I do it in like a new chat? Do I use the same one? Like some, and then I end up having like sometimes I end up doing it in the same one. Sometimes I do it in a different one. I end up having like 1,000 chats to go through like on the left. It's like impossible for me to like figure out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
So
That's
that's
a
like part of the
session.
annoying part about like continuing to use Claude. Just feel like it's hard to scale that up. And then like you want once you scale it up, you want visibility into each chat. So that you don't want to open each chat. Instead, you want like a dashboard that says like, oh, these are like 1,000 emails I've sent, which ones I've seen, which ones I'm not. That's where like the Claude code and the application building comes into play, where like you can build dashboards for it and like have like the data visualization as you scale things up, right? But like in the meanwhile, like at a lower scale, then you can absolutely just like open a new chat for each one because that keeps the context clean. And then just
Mm.
use a scale for
Yeah, because currently what I'm doing, and maybe this is like a low tech solution, maybe there's like a better solution, is like let's just say I want to write like a ad script, right? Like a UGC
it.
ad script,
Yeah.
spoken in the first person, right? I have like the things I want to hit, and then I have this certain angle, right? The angle might be, this is somebody who's tried everything and hasn't worked, and this is like a new solution, right? So that's one
Yeah.
angle. I'll like make that prompt. I'll help Claude help me generate that prompt, and then like I'll paste it in the prompt, and I'll place it in the chat, and it'll be perfect. Like it'd be good. I'll take that script. I do whatever I want with it. I come back. Maybe I want like a different angle. Maybe I want somebody who is like, this is more of like a doctor expert angle, right, or something like that. And then like I'll make that prompt. I'll put it in a new chat, and then like I'll do it like that. And then I'll make some chat refinements or prompt refinements rather, where it's like at the end of it, I don't even know like which one's better in a way, and I just have like this hodgepodge. Like, is there a better way to do that? I know you mentioned when you were chatting just before that maybe code something that is like way more repeatable. Is that like the ideal solution here?
I think that's the solution for you. So you're saying that you you have a different like different angles that you hit these like ads from, right? So what you could do is like skills don't have to be single step. It doesn't have to be like I ask for something, you give me something. Skills can also
Mm,
have intermediary steps. Like, skills could say like um your first goal is to ask the user to identify their goals for this advertising campaign, their target audience, the angle that they're taking. So you can define these things that you need to create a good ad. And then you can have the skill work towards finding those before it generates the final piece. Right. So that can all be packaged into the skill
mm,
where it's like you have these like prerequisite steps before we generate a final ad copy so that it actually understands what's going on.
okay.
Honestly, Wesley, I think you should try it. Or there's a new one called Hermes. That's also I
How do
hear
you
it's
spell that?
it's like the horse Hermes,
Oh, okay.
Hermes, Hermes agent. It's a little more user friendly, a little less like featured and powerful, but I hear people say that it's like easier to adopt as a beginner.
Okay. Yeah, I
And
think. Yeah,
yeah,
just go for it. Sorry.
Andy, I think you're probably too detailed and probably too even bother at this point. It's not going to make a difference. But
Mhm.
I think if you're starting fresh, you could probably take a look at that one. I
Yeah.
hear good things about it, but I'm also not sure. It could be a fucking psyop. The way that marketing works right now is like it's fucking ridiculous. Like people just say shit. They have like a million bots fucking comment
Yeah.
on Reddit and X, and then like it blows up. And it's
Is
like,
that what you're talking about? What I just said in the chat?
yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Yeah, this is so interesting because I haven't been like too deep in like this AI stuff. Like
Mhm.
I just use like prior I would just use like the chat and now I'm getting like more into it. It's almost like
Yeah.
I don't even know what I don't know about the use cases. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yes, I do know what you mean.
so like I'm sure like in like a month after me like iterating, I'll look back and be like, yeah, obviously I could have did it that, right? But then sort of like right now, I don't even know like the capabilities of it. So it's hard for me to even
Yeah.
like to surmise the use case other than like copying and pasting stuff from like the chat back and forth.
Yeah, well, one of like the biggest AI researchers in the space right now, like I don't know if you know Andre Carpathy. He was in OpenAI and he worked for Tesla Autopilot, and then now he
Okay.
does open source work and like his own stuff. He was just saying today like how like there's such a massive gap between the people that are like shilling AI and being like, holy shit, this is like incredible, this is like the future, and then like the people that are just using ChatGPT as chat. It's
Yeah.
like so the average person, like 99% of people understand that AI is just like ChatGPT. And a lot of them are like on last year's ChatGPT. They got that first impression and like that's what they remember and that's what they think it can do. But like
Yeah.
that like top 1% of people, like you said, like you haven't even like understood what AI can do yet. But like once you get to that point and you understand all that, it's like a whole different world. It's like not even
Yeah.
comparable.
Wait, Kevin, question for you, right? When do you start justifying the costs of like, tokens and usage before like if you're trying to build out a business, right? Like
Mhm.
when do you start justifying like the usage to like,
From day
generate
one.
or something? Like
Yeah.
when is it like not a cost thing?
Uh, it's always, I mean, it's a very important thing to take into account, especially now that they're cutting people off of subscriptions.
Yeah.
Before, I'm sure you guys know that, like, the subscriptions are heavily subsidized. Um, I pay $200 a month, but my usage is like in token counts, it's somewhere around like $10,000 a
Yeah.
month. So like, it's like heavily subsidized, and if it wasn't subsidized, I would be doing math from day one to make sure that I'm not, burning too many tokens. Because it's like you're basically hiring a full-time six-figure salary person if you're like using AI at its full potential. And like, yeah, you just have to like work with those costs from day one. Like currently with my software development, now that I'm off subscription, I'm burning like $200 to $500 a day, and it's a lot of fucking money. But like at the same time, people are willing to pay for the work, so it's like you have to figure out the balance of like how to get paid more than your tokens cost. It's like token arbitrage. A lot of these companies, that their model is literally just like, how many tokens can I earn? Like I'm gonna charge my user some rate for per token that's a little higher than what we get charged per token. And then how many tokens can I burn? How many tokens can I make my users use? That's like
Yeah.
a lot of the business models right now. And that's the same for any business for that's using AI.
Maybe there could be some best practices to, you know, use less tokens per prompt or like task.
There are. I mean, it's a mix of like prompting properly. Um, like there's like stupid shit like don't say thank you or please, right?
Yeah.
That's like burning tokens for no fucking reason. There's like there's other optimizations where you can have routers where it's like before it kind of like how it'll pick up a skill before it runs work for you. You can have it identify how difficult your current task is. Is this some stupid simple ask that's like any agent can complete, or it's some very complex coding system, right? And it can, based on that input, it can determine whether or not it can use the cheaper model to accomplish the tasking.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's like just like two things, but like there's like a lot of different ways you can optimize the token usage.
Yeah.
You figure that out later on. And another thing is like you eventually you try to offload as much as possible into deterministic code. Because if you can write it in code, it's free, right? That does not cost, like it costs like hundreds of a penny to run some code on your computer. So anything that you can move to code, you move to code.
Okay.
But yeah, that's like longer term. In the near term, I would say just like really just take advantage of all the subscriptions that are being offered right now, all the subsidized AI things. Just like take advantage of it, because we have maybe a year, two max of subsidized AI programs before they jack up the rates. So like now's the time to ideate, create your business, create your workflows, and like just burn all those tokens, because it's free right now, or basically.
Yeah. Still need to switch to OpenAI's API for OpenClaw, but so
Oh, are you burning API tokens right now?
no, it's dormant right now because I just don't have
Okay.
anything to do with it.
Okay.
But oh yeah, Wes, I also asked it. I told it send me a reminder that I have a haircut like on Friday at 12:30, and then it gave me a 1 hour reminder. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not talking.
Kev, not Kev, Wes, I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Or your mic's not working. I see your mouth moving, but I don't hear anything.
Yep. Is that
Yeah.
Yeah.
by the reminder meaning that like it created a calendar invite, or is that?
No, so I just told my open class. I have like a general chat of just like whatever. I was just like, hey, I have a haircut on 12:30 on Friday. Remind me. And it's just like, okay, here's a 1 hour reminder on the day of. I was like, oh shit.
Oh.
Yeah,
And
so it can set like they're what's called cron jobs.
Yeah.
And it's basically just schedulers, right? So it
Yeah.
has like this is like my open
okay.
call dashboard, but
So this is running on the like those Mac Minis that I always see people buying. Is
yeah,
that right? Okay.
exactly. Yeah. So
And then
you
like
can set cron
how does
jobs, right?
that?
So
Yeah.
like every night I have like whatever tasks that happen. Like if Andy schedules a haircut, it'll just have a cron job to kick off an hour before haircut. What were you saying about most?
Yeah. Is that like? And then how do you even like? Maybe this is probably like a super basic question, but how do you even like access it on that like different computer? Are you literally like plugging it into like a different monitor, or?
So in the start, I just plug into a monitor to set up, and then I use like AnyDesk or like
Okay.
viewer or like whatever, or like a tunnel. Yeah, but for the most part, you don't really access it because you do everything through the agent. You only access it if something that breaks. Like sometimes
Mm.
you'll have to like I'll have to go in if I broke a config, and I'll like have to use Claude Code and ask Claude Code to fix my own Claude, because it's like if the open Claude itself is broken and you can't ask it, then it's like kind of annoying.
Right. Like how would you access? Like how would you use it? I guess is it through
Well,
like?
I have it wired through my Discord, right? So I have like all these Discord channels.
Oh,
Like
okay.
so I have one for business ops, one for coding ops, right? So
Yeah.
like I have this where like this is where I intake all my code. This is like questions I might ask the agent by itself. This is like, for example, this is my SEO agent. This is basically my business agent. It has access to that platform I showed you. It has access to
Mm.
all the analytics, all the metrics, all the SEO tools that I have built in. So I can ask it to, let's see. So for example, like here, right, like backlink work. I
Mm.
can like it'll tell you what it needs to do. It'll say what I need CodeCraft, which is my coding bot, and then it'll go into this business code handoff channel, and it'll send stuff to the other bot to let it know that I need something to be written.
Wow.
Right? If it's anything code related, it'll send it to the other bot, and the other bot handles everything that's code related, but nothing like business related, right? So this business agent has that marketing skill set up so that it understands like how to build like emails, series, how to do like ad copy, how to do like UGC content, whatever. And then the code one is like just code. And then, like I have like my AI class. This one's hooked up to like Zoom. It'll pull video from Zoom, upload to YouTube, and then add to my website automatically.
Wow. So this is connected to your OpenClaw, which is sometimes connected to GPT API, sometimes connected to Claude API, depending on the
Yeah.
task.
Yeah, mostly GPT. The
Okay.
Claude part is something that I dispatch to Claude Code, and then Claude Code runs it. So it's a little different, but
Okay. Wow.
yeah. So it'll sound like I was trying to fix something earlier, so it'll say like, oh, okay, these are fixed. Whatever's not fixed, it's firing off to CodeCrab. So and then it generates a ticket, and the ticket gets taken care of, coded, and it talks back and tells them. But
So they're talking to each other.
yeah,
Oh wow.
Really should.
This is the wildest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't even know what to ask. It's just so like it's just yeah. Wow.
yeah, it's kind of like a different universe.
Wow.
You'll get there. It's like it doesn't take that long to get there. Like if you really just immerse yourself, there's so much value to be had from all this stuff. But you're already doing like more than 99% of people are in terms of like experimenting with AI and understanding how to, find value from it. But just like
Yeah.
how you'll figure it out.
It seems like the will be sort of like the next step for me is like right now I'm still in the middle of it, right? Like facilitating it. Right. For example, like I would have said to them, like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like for the SEO, I would be like, okay, run an SEO audit of like my website and like basically see what's going on, right? And then it would give me the results, and I'd be like, okay, like let's implement that, right? Whereas it looks
Yeah.
like for you, they're sort of doing that on their own, right? Like you started it, but then they were sort of like, okay, this is wrong, and then they know to like send to this guy to do this, right? And then it seems like
Exactly.
like you don't have to stand in the middle of it, right? Whereas right
Right.
now I'm still like facilitating every step, which is obviously like a really big step up, right? Because I don't know any of that SEO stuff
Mhm.
naturally, but
Yeah.
it's still me like facilitating it,
Really, you're the operator.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So the next step is just like you automate that. You like kind of go you just like go up the levels, like in terms of like first doing the work and then like dispatching the work to someone and watching someone do it and like managing someone. And then the next level is just like, overseeing the company, but like everyone's doing the work themselves kind of. You just go higher and higher until like you just don't touch it at all.
Yeah. So are your automations like it'll be like once a week run like an SEO audit and then like
So
fix whatever
I
it is?
built those into my website that I showed you. So like whenever CodeCrab builds something, it builds it into the website, and like it'll usually that usually means that it'll be ready the next time. Like I will never need to ask it to build that again. The website has automations. We run audit like crawlers every week, and like we have like scheduled audits, crawlers. Um, yeah, based on time or triggers, right? So another thing is like we have prospecting where we'll like, let's say scrape every sushi restaurant in the 5 mile radius. I'll score them based on their page speed scores, their SEO, all that stuff, and then I'll send them an audit report based on the findings and what sucked. So like the code emails that we send will automatically include all of the findings of like why your shit sucks and why you should pay us. And then like right, so those are like other triggers for running audits and like other you kind of just have like a system to wire everything up so that it's automatic. And
Yeah.
ideally without AI.
What is Code Crab? Is that
That's just the name for my coding agent.
okay? Oh,
That's like
that's just your name for it. Like
yeah.
that's oh okay. And then you're saying that what was that part where you said that once you do it once, you don't have to do it again?
So like let me just see. For example, right now it's asking. Previously, it was asking for a check rank feature, like check the rank of a business. And it was asking for MCP access to that, which means that an AI can understand exactly how to ask for a rank of a business, right? So it was asking for that. So it asked CodeCraft to build the feature. It's not asking CodeCraft to get the rank. It's asking it to actually build the feature so that next time I need the rank, it already has it in the MCP and the API so that it can just call for the rank and it'll have it. So every time it
Wow.
asks CodeCraft to build something, it's a feature instead of just a request.
Oh. And that's like an open claw feature, or is that?
No, that's kind of just something that endorse. You can wire up the agent however you want. Some people go crazy and like have like a whole company or very structured. I think it's a little bit stupid. I only have two agents. Just keep it as simple as possible. But
Wow.
you can wire them up however you want. You can let them talk to each other. You can define their roles when they're talking to each other, like what their goals are, what they're like when they should talk to each other. It's
Okay.
pretty much the same as managing a company, honestly. Like
Right.
these are your employees. You tell them how to interact. Your employees have kind of bad memory. They act up sometimes, and they might lie to you. That's like any company, right? It's
Yeah. Wow. You mentioned prior that you sort of have a workflow for I think you mentioned like social media ads and stuff like that. Like what is that? I'm just thinking of like, use cases in my life that would be interesting to see how like someone's automating it. Like what does that look like that flow?
that one's honestly not like super complete right now. It's like low priority for me. But like
Oh, sorry, you said the what is not complete?
the social media stuff is like
Oh.
it's not that great. That's like so. I was supposed to have like an agency take over the social media stuff on the end, so I just didn't want to bother it for the time being. But like, I mean, you could think about it from like workflow perspective. Like, you have your Google Analytics, your Meta pixel conversions, your and then like your ad accounts. All those things are hooked up, right? So you can hook all those up and then like you can run a let's say a weekly job where you have your AI agent go across all your analytics channels, analyze the conversion rates of the success of each ad. You can have it trigger you can do A/B testing automatically with different copy, figure out what works best, figure out what your audience looks like. You can look into like the audience insights, like where are my people from, what age are they, and then based on that, those all those insights that you've understood from the analytics, you could adjust your ad copy. You could do different videos. You could, you know, you could. It'll actually tell you what you should do, right? It might be like, oh, your demographic is really young. You could maybe benefit from advertising on TikTok through reels with like young creators, or like if you have an older audience, you might benefit from something that's a little more like traditional, right? Um,
Mm.
and then I'm working on like the like AI ad video pipeline where we can take our images as references and then we can just throw them into video generators with like storyboards in terms of like for example, you can provide a UGC script and you can have just like some AI person talk about this hair product and how great it is and like or how you should apply the hair product, when you should use it, all that stuff, right? Like right now, video is not perfect. I would say like we're still. I don't know if video will ever get there just because it's so fucking expensive to run and it's all subsidized right now. And honestly, like you saw, OpenAI killed Sora, so it's like
Yes.
the economics might not be there for video. Honestly, we may never reach the point of like viable video, but it's gonna keep getting better until it dies. So like
Yeah.
my bet is that it'll get good enough that I can just pass it like a good storyboard prompts with like the brand assets and like all the brand values and details, and it can create a really good video for me so that it's like an automated pipeline.
Yeah, I know like VO is very expensive as well. What's always hard for automating like like script automating is obviously like quite easy. Um, and then it's the video and image generation that's like quite easy. And maybe this is sort of something that like I don't know if AI like I don't know enough about AI to know if it has the capability to do that. But for it to, I could generate like an AI image and like I'll know if it's like usable, right? And then
Mhm.
that's sort of like my judgment. I don't know if like AI
Mhm.
could. I know they could judge. I know they could make the
Yeah,
image, right?
yeah,
I don't know if they could determine whether it's good or
yeah,
usable
I
or
agree.
if it looks strange, right? And then the same things with videos where it's like, if you experiment with like Sora back in the day, or like VO, or like Kling, right, or any of these generations where it's like you start with like an image and then you have to be like pretty specific about what it is, and anyone who's like played with it knows that like sometimes it gets like really right, but like sometimes it gets it like really fucked.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
like I don't know, and maybe this is a question, like I don't know if AI could like look at the video and just be like, okay, no, that's like fucked up. Like we need to remake it.
Probably not because it's the
Uh,
same AI making the video, right?
right, right.
So you can get pretty close these days with like a really good prompt. Like if you think about it from like a videographer's perspective, in terms of like the camera angle, the camera movement, the lighting, and like the character consistency and all that stuff, if you can put all that into the prompt and have it extremely detailed, and then I wouldn't let it go freeform. I would have image frame one describe the image frame one exactly what's there. Like let's say a male holding a hair product, and you have image frame two. You generate that image frame two separately using the same prompt but like slightly modified to show a different scene. For example, like male putting product into his hand, right? And then maybe the third one's him putting it in his hair, and then like you can work on those. If you work from those images and provide those as like kind of like checkpoints for the AI, it does videos a lot better than if you don't have those checkpoints. Right. So
Mm,
if you just freeform it, it's like, oh, this is the starting image. Have this man put hair in his put product in their hair while talking about how great this product is. It's not going to work very well
right.
because it's too you're giving it too much creative freedom. You have to really lock it down as much as possible, down to like every tiny detail. Like like he's in front of a bathroom. There's like a sconce that's like on the left and the right
Yeah.
side of the mirror. He has a very clear like a marble um sink that's like clean with no objects on it. Like you have to describe everything down to the T, then you can get some better generation. But
Yeah.
I agree that it still kind of sucks right now.
So there's this term called inpainting. I don't know anything about like if it's possible yet or how good it is for videos, but like for example, inpainting is like you generate an image, right? And it's like you want to tweak something like the character's missing a thumb or whatever, or you want to change the colors, like that's inpainting. And then
Mm,
Mhm.
I'm sure it's like being developed for videos or it exists already, but yeah, that's just the term that you're looking for.
And painting
uh,
fucking sucks right now. Like if you ask it to edit a picture, it's so bad at that. You
Yeah.
have to just regenerate it completely. It like that. This is like one of the parts of AI where you absolutely cannot you can't really it just cannot edit pictures at all. Like it's really bad at understanding an image and like editing it.
do you use Nano Banana for
Yeah,
images? Is that okay?
yeah.
And then there's like APIs and stuff with that, right? Like it could
Mhm.
automatically.
Yeah, it's just Gemini API. You have the Gemini API key, you pass it through, and it'll run it.
Okay, that's interesting. Or that's good to
Yeah.
know. Right now, I'm like typing into Claude, like make me a Nano Banana, um, like prompt, right? Like I'm still doing everything manually. I'm still
Uh,
at that phase, and then like I
yeah,
copy
yeah.
that, and then like I paste that into Nano
Yeah.
Banana. And then for videos, what do you use? That I've been struggling with.
Um, I think Higgsfield is probably the best for most use cases right
Yeah.
now.
But that has no API, right? Like that you have to manually do it.
I'm not. I've never used the API. I
Oh,
honestly,
okay.
I haven't done too much video work lately. I've kind of just been focusing on like I've been building a bunch of legal and medical applications, and like the legal side, they've been like on top of me trying to get me to like build shit for them. So
Yeah.
I've just been building legal
Yeah.
frameworks right now.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, it's like something to think about is like you may want to like find some deeper niches as you get into AI because everyone's building the same fucking shit. It's like it's so oversaturated in the parts that are saturated, like marketing, like all the like everyone's building like coding orchestration at the same time right now. Everyone's building code outreach, SEO, marketing agents. It's like I think it's like everybody kind of just rides the hype and like gets sucked into the same things and everyone's building the same things. So it's like it's very easy to get lost in that. It's also very discouraging because there's so many people building cool stuff and like people build really fast. And like you'll spend like months building something and then some guy will build it in like 2 days. And you're like, ah fuck. So it's like
yeah.
it's really good to find a niche that benefits from AI. Like for me, it's like I ended up somehow I ended up in like personal injury, legal, right? And that's like
Yeah.
a really good niche that AI would benefit a lot. Like there's other niches um, like all the trades, like trucking, all these industries that are like deep in the fucking past that need AI to like pretty much reset. That like there's like a lot of opportunities out there, but it's like the more like untouched of a corner of a niche that you can find, the better. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you have like your like side project, like I'm sure you can figure out like where you can find the most value in a way that like other people wouldn't even like bother to touch.
Yeah. Will this video and last week's video will they be uploaded to your YouTube?
Yeah, I forgot that whole
Oh,
last week, but I will upload both.
does it ever get like overwhelming where like AI is going like every day is like a new thing? And it's
We,
like
we call that AI psychosis.
yeah.
It's a very real thing, and it happens to pretty much like all the people that understand where AI is going, like and are constantly building with AI every day. We all have some form of AI psychosis. It's like holy shit, like am I behind or am I ahead? Like is like is the world gonna end before I build anything? Like
Yeah, yeah.
what's gonna happen? Like we don't like yeah I don't know. It's definitely a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it's so wild.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's so much stuff that like you guys probably will never even hear about, but like on our side, it's like holy shit, like if something went wrong, it's like this equivalent of having all the presidents with their hands on their nukes. It's like it's like that level of power that's like being developed in the AI world right now.
Yeah, some scary stuff. It's like, meanwhile, there's people that I work with that are still using, like, they're trying to do deep account research for sales and they're using Sonnet. I'm like, you're supposed to be using Opus.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll just see where it goes. Just try to focus on what's the task ahead and then take it step by step now.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, I have no more questions. Thank you, Kev.
Yeah, same. I have no more questions. Thank you, Kevin.
Even at the,
Oh, also your mic is on I think you're using a different mic today.
all like yeah,
Not
yeah.
the, uh,
No big mics today.
yeah.
Yeah.
No crispy voice for you guys.
Those are pretty cool.
All right. Good night, guys.
Yep, good night. Thank you, Kevin.
See you
Thanks,
around.
Andy.
I was.
See you guys
Bye.
soon. Bye.